You noticed the warmth was too sudden. The same person who had been distant for weeks suddenly spoke softly, asked personal questions, offered help they had never offered before, and waited to see whether the old version of you would rush back into access. Your body recognized the pattern before your mind finished explaining it. Something in your chest became still, not cold, not bitter, just awake. You did not accuse them. You did not perform suspicion. You simply listened, watched the timing, and felt the mercy hidden inside your hesitation. That pause was not fear. That pause was protection. There was a time when you would have answered too quickly, forgiven too publicly, explained your pain until you sounded guilty for having it, and walked straight into a situation designed to make your reaction look worse than the harm that caused it. But Allah had already been working on you in rooms nobody saw, through nights when you prayed with a tired voice, through mornings when you wanted to send a long message and instead placed the phone face down, through disappointments that slowly taught you not every open door is an invitation from Him. The trap was not built for who you are now. It was built for the version of you who needed closure from people who enjoyed keeping you confused, the version who mistook anxiety for loyalty, the version who believed silence meant losing. And that is why it failed quietly, not because you became smarter than everyone around you, and not because you were above being tested, but because Allah allowed your heart to be trained before the test arrived. You had already cried through the lesson. You had already learned the cost of ignoring red flags. You had already seen how one emotional reaction can be turned into a story against you. So when the setup appeared, you did not move like someone desperate to be understood. You moved like someone who had been taught. Sometimes divine protection does not sound like thunder. Sometimes it feels like a calm refusal in your chest when everything around you is trying to pull an old response out of you. The strange part is that the trap often does not look ugly at first. It can look like concern, like an invitation, like a harmless question in a group conversation. Like someone saying, "I just want to understand," while their tone quietly demands that you defend your entire character. It can come through a message that appears innocent, but carries pressure under every line. "Are you really not going to say anything? I thought you were more mature than this. Everyone is confused by how you are acting." These words may not be openly cruel, but they can be arranged like a narrow hallway, pushing you toward an answer that will later be used as proof that you were unstable, disrespectful, or difficult. This is where discernment becomes visible. Not in dramatic speeches, not in exposing people, not in announcing that you have enemies, but in recognizing when a conversation is no longer seeking truth. You begin to notice when someone is not asking a question, but building a record. You notice when kindness arrives only after boundaries are placed. You notice when an apology is shaped less like repentance and more like a key, designed to reopen access without accountability. And still, you are not called to hatred. Islam does not teach you to see every disagreement as a conspiracy or every difficult person as evil. People can be wounded, immature, afraid, proud, or careless without being villains. This is why Basirah, inner sight, granted by Allah, must be held with humility. It does not get you suspicious of everyone. It makes you careful with what used to control you. You do not need to punish someone to protect yourself from their pattern. You do not need to prove their intention to obey the warning in your heart. There are moments when Allah lets you see enough, not so you can destroy another person's image, but so you can stop handing them the part of you they know how to misuse. That is a different kind of strength. It does not shake the room. It simply refuses to enter the room the same way again. The old, you might have mistaken restraint for weakness. You might have believed that if you did not answer every accusation immediately, the lie would become truth. You might have felt your pulse rising when someone mentioned your name with a slight twist, when a group suddenly went quiet after you entered, when a person who had hurt you acted relaxed in public while silently hoping you would look emotional enough to confirm their version of events. That kind of moment tests more than your patience. It tests what you believe about Allah as witness. The nafs wants to grab the moment by the throat and force fairness out of it. Faith teaches the hand to release, not because injustice is acceptable, and not because your pain is imaginary, but because not every battle is won by entering it. Sometimes the one who tries to provoke you needs your reaction to complete the story. Without it, the structure collapses under its own weight. You stand there, you breathe, you say only what needs to be said, and you leave the rest with the one who heard what was spoken before you arrived. That is a sharp kind of healing, because it means the place that used to bleed on command has begun to close. If that recognition reaches something you have lived through, you can like this video in a quiet way, not as a performance, but as a mark of gratitude for the restraint Allah helped you keep when your emotions had every reason to rise. The most important victory in that moment is not that they looked wrong, it is that you did not become reckless just to feel powerful. You did not surrender your adab, you did not let someone else's disorder become your behavior. That is how a trap loses its grip. The bait may still be placed in front of you, but hunger has changed. You no longer crave the same validation, the same explanation, the same apology with hidden hooks inside it. Your soul has learned that peace can be more convincing than a perfect argument. There is a reason Allah often prepares people in isolation before He lets them face public pressure. Isolation removes the audience you used to perform strength for. It leaves you alone with your habits, your impulses, your unfinished grief, and your private dua. You learn who you are when no one is watching you be patient. You learn whether you obey Allah only when obedience is admired, or also when it costs you the satisfaction of answering back. Maybe there was a season when your phone became a battlefield. You typed paragraphs, erased them, typed again, and then sat there staring at the screen as if your entire dignity depended on being understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. Then one night, perhaps after prayer, perhaps while the house was quiet and everyone else slept, you realized the long message was not going to bring peace. It was going to reopen a door Allah had been helping you close, so you deleted it. Nobody clapped, nobody saw the discipline, but something in your heart shifted. That was training. The tears you thought were delaying your life were teaching your nervous system not to bow to urgency. The unanswered questions were teaching you that closure can come from Allah, not from the mouth of the person who confused you. The loneliness was not proof that you had been abandoned. It was the place where your dependence was being purified. You began to understand tawakkul in a practical way, not as doing nothing, but as doing the right thing without demanding that the outcome explain itself immediately. So, when the later test came, when someone tried to pull you into a public exchange, when a fake apology arrived with just enough sweetness to make you doubt your boundary, your soul already knew what your ego had not wanted to learn. You did not need to be dramatic. You did not need to call it a trap out loud. You simply recognized that Allah had already made you practice this moment in private. But discernment must be guarded from ego, because the heart can turn even protection into pride if it is not careful. Seeing a pattern does not mean you know every hidden intention. Not falling into manipulation does not make you spiritually superior to the person who tried to manipulate you. And it does not mean every person who disappoints you is being used against you. Sometimes people are simply limited. Sometimes they do not have the language to love you well. Sometimes they apologize badly because they're ashamed, not because they are plotting. Sometimes a tense conversation is just a tense conversation. This nuance matters because Shaitan can push a wounded person into paranoia just as easily as he can push them into naivety. Islam calls you to balance. You are allowed to notice harm without inventing details. You are allowed to keep boundaries without humiliating people. You are allowed to forgive without giving the same access. You are allowed to step back while still making dua for someone's guidance. The trap that failed may have revealed a real pattern, but your response must still be accountable before Allah. Do not let someone else's lack of sincerity remove your sincerity. Do not let their hidden motives become an excuse for your harshness. The messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, taught strength with restraint, clarity with mercy, and justice without cruelty. That means your spiritual maturity is measured not only by what you detect, but by what you refuse to become after detecting it. When you walk away from provocation, you are not declaring yourself innocent of all flaws. You are acknowledging that this particular door is not healthy for your soul. When you stop explaining yourself to people who twist your words, you're not saying no one can correct you. You are saying correction requires sincerity, not performance. The chosen responsibility is heavy because it demands humility at the exact moment your ego wants applause. It asks you to be awake without becoming suspicious, firm without becoming cold, protected without becoming proud. They think about the fake apology that comes after silence has already healed you. It may begin gently, "I hate how things ended," or "I hope you know I never meant to hurt you." At first, your heart softens because you are not made of stone. You remember the good moments. You remember when you trusted them. You remember the version of the relationship you wanted to be true. But then you keep reading, and there it is. No ownership, no specific admission, no willingness to repair what was actually broken, only a quiet attempt to make you responsible for reopening the door. A younger version of you would have rushed toward the emotional relief of that message. You would have ignored the emptiness inside it because you wanted the bond more than you wanted the truth. Now you read it slowly. You let the first wave pass. You do not answer from loneliness. You do not answer from guilt. Maybe you make wudu. Maybe you pray 2 rak'ahs. Maybe you sit at the edge of your bed with the phone in your hand and ask Allah, "Do not let my softness carry me back into harm." That dua changes the atmosphere. You are not asking to become cruel. You are asking to become clear. And clarity may lead you to respond briefly, or not respond at all, or say, "I wish you well, but I am not reopening this conversation." The power is not in the sentence. The power is in the fact that you no longer need the apology to complete you. That is how Allah protects a person from being reattached to what He already separated them from. The situation may look small from the outside, just a message on a screen, just a few words, just an old name appearing again. But inside you, it is a test of whether healing has become discipline. And discipline is not emotionless. It is emotion submitted to Allah before it becomes action. There are also traps that happen in public where the pressure is not hidden in words, but in atmosphere. You are at work, in a family gathering, in a shared space, or in a group chat, and someone says something with just enough edge to pull you out of yourself. They mention an old mistake. They make a joke that is not really a joke. They ask why you have been so quiet, but their face says they already have an answer prepared. For a second, your body remembers the old script. Defend, explain, expose, correct the room, rescue your image. Then a calm interruption rises from somewhere deeper. You realize you do not have to give every person a live demonstration of your wound. You can answer with one sentence. You can change the subject. You can step outside. You can let silence expose the imbalance that your anger would have hidden. This is not passive weakness. It is strategic, spiritual restraint. If you have lived a moment where Allah helped you stop yourself before your reaction became someone else's evidence, leave one honest comment. What reaction did He help you outgrow? That question matters because many people think growth feels like constant confidence, when in reality, it often feels like swallowing the sentence that would have satisfied your ego but harmed your soul. In that public moment, your silence may make others uncomfortable because it denies them the scene they expected. But do not become addicted to that effect. The goal is not to make them feel guilty. The goal is to remain clean Before Allah, there is a difference between silence that manipulates and silence that protects. One is designed to punish, the other is chosen, because speaking would drag you into a false frame. When you know the difference, your restraint becomes worship. You are not silent because you have nothing to say. You are silent because you have decided your peace is not available for performance. The deeper lesson is that Allah may allow you to see the trap without immediately removing the people connected to it. That can feel confusing. You may ask, if He showed me what was happening, why did He not stop it earlier? Why did He let me sit in rooms where the energy shifted? Why did He let me trust someone who was studying my weak points? These are difficult questions, and they deserve more than easy answers. Sometimes protection comes early and a door closes before you understand why. Sometimes protection comes through pain and you learn after the bruise. Sometimes Allah does not block the entire event because He is teaching you the difference between fear and discernment, between bitterness and boundaries, between your old attachment and your new obedience. The point is not that betrayal is good. Betrayal wounds. Manipulation damages trust. Emotional setups can make a person question their own perception. Islam does not ask you to pretend harm did not happen. It asks you to bring harm into the light of Allah's wisdom without letting it become your identity. A trap can reveal who someone is, but it can also reveal who you are becoming. You saw that you no longer begged to be included where your dignity was being quietly negotiated. You saw that you could leave a conversation unfinished and still sleep. You saw that an old trigger no longer had the authority to drag you into chaos. This is why Sabre is not merely waiting. It is the disciplined refusal to let pain govern your next move. And Tawakkul is not pretending you are unaffected. It is trusting Allah enough to act from guidance instead of panic. The trap did not fail because you mastered human behavior. It failed because Allah had placed distance between you and the version of yourself that would have made the setup easy. Still, there is a grief that comes with seeing clearly. People talk about discernment as if it only brings power, but sometimes it brings sadness first. You may miss the days when you could believe every smile, answer every call, and assume every apology meant change. You may feel tired of having to pause, test the fruit, and ask Allah to purify your own perception before responding. This is where spiritual maturity becomes tender. You are not becoming hard, you are becoming responsible with your softness. You can still love people. You can still be generous. You can still hope for reconciliation, whether it is real repentance and changed behavior. But you stop sacrificing your sanity to maintain an image of peace. You stop calling confusion mercy. You stop calling repeated disrespect patience, when what you really mean is fear of loss. True sabr does not require you to remain available for harm. True forgiveness does not require you to pretend trust has been rebuilt, and true reliance on Allah does not require you to ignore what He allowed you to notice. There may be a person who genuinely did not know how deeply they hurt you, and when confronted with sincerity, they may listen, change, and honor your boundary. That is the counterexample your heart must make room for, because not every difficult person is setting a trap. But when someone repeatedly uses your honesty against you, repeatedly appears only when you are healing, repeatedly frames your boundaries as cruelty, and repeatedly pressures you to respond in ways that benefit their story, then your calm distance is not arrogance, it is wisdom. You can make dua for them from far away. You can ask Allah to guide both of you. You can release the need to be publicly vindicated. The heart that has been trained by Allah does not need every ending to look dramatic. Some endings are just a door remaining closed, without hatred, without speeches, without returning to the old injury to see whether it still hurts. And when you finally look back, you may notice something that humbles you more than it excites you. Allah was changing your reactions before anyone tried to test them. The delayed answer to your dua, the uncomfortable separation, the season of being misunderstood, the ache of not being invited, the exhaustion of repeating yourself until you had nothing left to say, all of it was shaping a quieter strength. You thought you were only losing people, but you were losing the need to be chosen by rooms that required you to abandon yourself. You thought silence meant you had no defense, but silence became the space where Allah showed you what the argument would have hidden. You thought restraint would make you look weak, but it kept your hands clean when the situation tried to stain them. This is the quiet realization. Sometimes Allah does not stop the trap from being built. He lets the pieces come together where you can see them. He lets the sudden kindness arrive, the loaded question appear, the fake apology knock, the public provocation unfold, not to frighten you and not to make you obsessed with enemies, but to show you that what once controlled you no longer has permission. He shows you who built it, but he also shows you why it did not work. The mercy was not only in being protected from them, the mercy was in being protected from your old self. You did not fall because by the time the trap was ready, Allah had already taught your heart how to stand still.